the fields we go, laughing. Hello? Hello? What's this on my doorstep? A little parcel. What does this say? Look at this. All wrapped up. Looking very festive. I'm just starting to feel a bit festive. Lard Island's a lovely place to be at Christmas. I'm starting to feel that Christmas spirit all over me. Lovely. Now then, curious little envelope. Wonder if I could open this and see what might lie inside. Let's see. Oh, there's a note. It's interesting. Handwritten note. Let's see what it says. Let's open this little seal that's on here. I can pop that open. Right, get my reading eyes on. Hello, Rich, Sid, and Nick. Well, it's sort of marked from the North Pole. This note. For this year at Advent, I have asked each of you from the TooFatLardies Oddcast crew to share your thinking on a few questions relating to wargaming, and to share these with each other and with listeners to the Oddcast. Each entry into your Advent calendar should be no more than a few minutes, which the web elves can then publish daily, and which will help us all get into the spirit of Christmas by sharing just a taste of this wonderful wargaming hobby. If you accept this challenge, Nick, the first entry in this Advent calendar falls to you. Please take a moment to tell us about your favourite wargaming project. Your time starts now. Love from Father Christmas. So there really is a Santa. I knew it. I knew there was, and he's written to me and he wants me to talk about wargaming. Excellent. So let me just retire to a comfy chair and think about this challenge. Now, what's he asked me to do? He wants me to talk about my favourite wargaming project. Well, now, I suppose that people might expect me to talk about Arnhem. There we go. Let's get the wargaming TooFatLardies Oddcast bingo card out, and we can cross out Arnhem and Market Garden. This has been a theme running for me for the last few years, which you've had lots and lots of work done. It's been really fascinating and hugely enjoyable to do. I mean, it's been a project without end, and of endless fascination, which has been brilliant. Walking the ground, doing all the research, meeting and talking to so many people who share an interest in Market Garden and Arnhem and in World War II in general has been really, really highlight of the last few years. It's been kind of overwhelming, the amount of work and time we've had to put into it, really, but it's been great, really great. And obviously putting the game on that we did in this year at the Hartenstein, another one to cross off the bingo card, was brilliant. Fascinating that is. I think the whole fascination of war and wargaming has been a bit of a project for me since the very beginning, really, ever since I was at school, as well as making Airfix models and Airfix toy soldiers and playing with Timpo soldiers and Action Man in the 1970s. I used to spend weekends watching what have since become classic war movies and reading Commando comics, battle comics, Warlord comics, etc. In that time, 70s, the war, we had the war placed in front of us, the Second World War, nearly every weekend. It's quite unsurprising that boys should become fascinated with war when you keep putting it in front of them in that way. I also remember a magazine called Purnell's Illustrated Encyclopedia of Weapons and Warfare, which came out in 1977. And I used to cut bits out of that magazine and put it in a folder that I would call my war project. So that's where my mind goes to when you talk about favourite war project. But I think really, if we're talking about that wargaming project, of all the things I think that I've worked on and been involved with, I would go for the work that was done around the First World War in the Middle East that ended up in the form of "If the Lord spares us" rules, but it was a project that I really enjoyed from start to finish, and I think it is finished now. I don't know that will revisit it, but it was the prospect of starting from scratch. I knew about the First World War. Who didn't know about the First World War? But like many people, I did not know very much about the First World War outside the Western Front. And it became a fascination for me when I realised that I had a great uncle who'd been killed in Palestine in 1917 at one of the actions following on from the Third Battle of Gaza. And I started to explore his story, and I started to think about how we could put this into war games form on the tabletop, and starting to explore more about how the First World War played out in other parts of the world that were not the Western Front. So Palestine is a really interesting campaign. There's lots of fluidity in the action. You've got some big open ground actions. You've got cavalry behaving as cavalry did in sort of the early 20th century. Mobile mounted infantry. But from a wargaming perspective, it was a challenge because there were no available figures available. At that time, I wanted to do it kind of a brigade level game, and there were no figures really available to do that in. I think minifigs did a few, but not many others. There's a bit of Peter Pig First World War, but that was mainly Western Front, as I recall. But the whole novel nature of the research, and the fact that most of the research had to be done before a lot of the really good online resources that we have available now were available to us. I guess I'm talking about 20 odd years ago, really. I think about 18 to 20 years ago. And the personal connection made it important. Tracing the war diaries of Albert Skinner, the battalion that he was with, which was the 2nd, 4th West Kents, tracing their war diaries, then getting the official histories, reading the official histories, finding some of the rare texts that were available, some of the old books that had been written and were hard to get hold of. It was a really important part of the project. I still remember the excitement of picking up some of those books that had been recommended to me, but that it took me months and months to find. And you read them and you think, well, there's only a couple of paragraphs in here are relevant, but they're still really exciting. And then, of course, it expands. You go outside Palestine, you go back to Gallipoli, you understand more about the fighting that went on there. And then you move to Mesopotamia and the fighting that went on for the Indian Expeditionary Force D and things that went on in Mesopotamia and East Africa, etc. I was able to pick up a silk map of Persia. Brilliant, lovely, folds out into probably a 3-foot square piece of silk map. It must be an escape map or something, I don't really know, but it was beautiful. With all the towns and villages and waterways marked on it. And thinking about using that as a basis for campaign operations was just tremendous. And I've still actually really never been able to do that much. So, turning that project into, from nothing, into something which grew into If the Lord Spares Us, was a really good feeling. And I don't think anything else can really quite compare to it from what we've done so far in the rest of our work together. So, have I moved on from it? Are things different now? Would I go back to it? I hope I'd go back to it. I'd love to reconnect to it, perhaps in a new scale maybe, and in a smaller scale where figure availability and even 3D printing again would make that so much easier now to do that. But I wonder really, as I stare into the tinsel that will soon be around this Christmas tree that is standing before me, still wrapped in its netting, if this is anything more than just a pipe dream. Who knows?